Reincarnation. There is no doubt in my mind that the spirit lives on after death and often returns to the earthly plane to experience and learn from all aspects of human existence. Based on my own memories and experiences, I know that I have lived many past or possibly parallel lives. I also know that I will not reincarnate again once my current mission has been completed. Throughout the centuries, reincarnation has been the subject of huge debate, argument, and scientific study. And, according to theoretical physicists, quantum mechanics incorporates theories which demonstrate that our consciousness lives on after death. After all, Albert Einstein's theory of relativity states, among other things, that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one form to another. I can only write on the basis of my own experiences, and in doing so, hope that they will serve as evidence and resonate with my readers. When I talk about past lives, I would like to say that it is possible that these are actually parallel lives, but because we have been conditioned into thinking about time as being a linear concept, whereby these lives follow one another like night follows day, it is very hard to get our heads around the possibility that we are in fact multi-dimensional beings which exist in an infinite number of universes, and that we create our own reality. As previously explained at the beginning of this book, I remember what it was like before I was born, but I also remember quite a few of my previous lives. Well, actually, most of my memories are of previous deaths. I think that this is because those past life memories which surface through our various levels of consciousness in our current lives will be strong echoes of intense, powerful events, such as death, that occurred during previous incarnations. These emit huge amounts of psychic energy which resonate strongly in the body's aura and are consequently the easiest to recall. However, having said that death is a traumatic experience, it is nothing to be feared and can actually be a transcendent event. Being born is far more traumatic. My own memories of my birth experience are terrifying. During my early childhood, I experienced recurring nightmares about a huge pulsating drum which was advancing towards me and threatening to overwhelm me. As it approached, the throbbing increased in intensity, and I was powerless to move or escape it. It has subsequently been explained to me that the throbbing was probably my mother's heartbeat, which was beating powerfully while I was being born. Leaving the womb, becoming encased in a human body, and taking one's first breaths of air are all frightening in the extreme. Death, on the other hand, is a completely liberating, beautiful experience. Although I'm not talking about the events leading up to death, which can sometimes be painful and extremely traumatic. In one of my past lives, I was a soldier of some sort, possibly Roman. I was fighting on a battlefield, surrounded by other soldiers who were fighting fiercely, and I remember being stabbed in the back between my spine and right shoulder blade by an assailant who attacked me from behind. The minute the sword penetrated my body, I was overwhelmed by the most intensely beautiful golden light which spread throughout my body. I felt no pain and bore no feelings of hatred or retribution against whoever killed me. It felt like it was part of my destiny and that my death had occurred at its appointed time. The strange thing about this experience was that for most of my current life, I had felt like I had a blockage of some sort in that part of my body, some sort of tension, and that I was never quite able to draw a fully satisfying deep breath. This memory came to me suddenly one day as I was walking along a footpath near my home. At the very moment of that memory surfacing, the blockage in my back dissipated, and I have never suffered from it since. The following is an account which I wrote for the funeral of my son Alex's father, Torbjörn, who died in a hospice after a long fight with throat cancer when Alex was just 13 years old. The Golden Light. I would like to tell you about something strange and quite fantastic which happened the night that Torbjörn died. Something that has given me great strength and which I hope will also provide you with some comfort as I tell you about it now. As you probably know, Torbjörn was admitted to a hospice on Saturday the 19th of August. Alex and I were with him all day, and we returned home during the evening after the doctors at the hospice told us that he would sleep for a long time due to all the drugs that they had given him. We went to bed as soon as we got home because we were exhausted after all the events of the day. I fell asleep immediately, but I woke up suddenly in the middle of the night at 1:30 a.m. and experienced the most beautiful shimmering golden light radiating towards me from Torbjörn. The light which enveloped me was beautiful, soft and all-encompassing and full of an indescribable joy. Torbjörn was the light, and the light was Torbjörn. It was like it was his core, his soul, the greater being which is and always will be Torbjörn, without sickness, without pain, without any ties or limitations. I acquired an insight into another reality which is completely different to the one in which we normally live, and which is incredibly warm, loving, and beautiful. Torbjörn said that I shouldn't worry, that he was okay and that he was free. When the phone rang at 6 o'clock in the morning, I already knew that he was dead. They said that he had passed away peacefully at 1:30 a.m, at exactly the same time that I had experienced the golden light. Because of this, I know that Torbjörn is happy where he is now. It has given me great strength that I know will always be with me. As the days have passed, this feeling has grown stronger inside me. At the same time, I knew that I had to stand here today and tell you about the golden light, so that you can also know that death is not the end, just a transition to something new and wonderful. What I experienced was a message to not just myself, but to all of you. When Alex was a toddler, he had an invisible friend called Dilly. In fact, he had several invisible friends, but Dilly was the main one. They had the most fascinating adventures together, and I'm convinced that Dilly and Co. are either memories from a past life or some of his guides. I will cover this subject in more detail in the chapter about Alex, because it's a compelling story in its own right. Xenoglossy is the term used for the alleged paranormal phenomenon whereby people speak or write a language or words which they could not have acquired by natural means, and it is thought that these languages and words are bleed-throughs from other lives. When he first started speaking, Alex had many such words, and interestingly, my nephew has always called me Blom Blom. I take this as a big compliment because Blom means flower in one of the Norwegian languages. Other past or parallel lives that I remember include the following. I was an itinerant holy man in a hot country possibly India or somewhere similar. I roamed the country barefoot with my begging bowl and starved to death sitting beneath the shade of a large tree, rather like a plane tree. It was a very peaceful transition, and once again I was encompassed by a beautiful golden light at the moment of my death. I remember being hung and burnt as a witch in what was probably the Middle Ages. I remember the rope around my neck. The large knot was on the right side of my neck, making my head tilt to the left. This could explain why I hate wearing things round my neck, and also why I have suffered from constant pain in the right side of my neck for many years. But the minute the memory surfaced, the pain dissipated, never to return. I remember leading a nomadic life with the soul that reincarnated as my Steve in this life. We travelled together in a landscape not dissimilar to that of modern Arizona. In my memory, we were standing together on a high rocky outcrop, overlooking a vast, red, sandy but fertile plain. I think that this memory could be from a time many thousands of years ago, because we lived and travelled completely in harmony with nature. Although we sometimes foraged for and even killed animals for our food, we were not dependent on plant and animal nourishment, because we were able to absorb the nutrients that our bodies required from the air. Although we usually travelled alone, we were loosely connected to a larger tribe and often attended gatherings. War was a completely alien concept to us. We were children of nature. In one of her psychic visions, Jilly saw me in a previous life as a prisoner in a tall tower, rather like Rapunzel in the fairy tale. I spent most of my life locked away and would spend hours looking out of the window, longing to escape and be free. She believes that after that life I made a pact with myself to compensate for my incarceration by walking free along the footpaths of Britain. Jilly and I were told by a renowned medium that we had been together many times in previous incarnations. We have no trouble believing that, because it is something which we have always intuitively known. As previously mentioned at the beginning of this book, I have memories of beings who I call my parents in the sky, who I believe are my guides and mentors on the astral plane. The beings depicted in this photo of a painting called The Parents by the artist William Arkell bear an uncanny resemblance to my own parents in the sky. More information about this painting can be found in the chapter entitled Once Upon a Time. At various stages of my life, I have also been aware of other guides who are there to help me tackle some of the challenges that I have had to deal with in this life. These include the following. A guide who I call Wolf. He looks rather like a Native American Indian. He is very big, heavily muscled, but infinitely gentle and patient. My paternal grandmother, who suffered terribly from mental illness for much of her life. She had the most beautiful, gentle soul and loved dancing. My father died from cancer in April 2003. My sister and I were both present when he died, and we both felt that his soul wasted no time hanging around, but rather departed at the speed of light to travel to some of the higher astral planes. I believe that he remained there for several years while he was undertaking some higher spiritual tasks, but in recent years I have felt his presence again. It is like he is watching over me and offering me support and guidance. The Shining One. who only appears at special times when special help and support are required. I have the feeling that this incredibly beautiful, radiant being exists at a much higher spiritual level than my other guides. More recently, when I was walking the Speyside Way, a new guide came in when I was wondering about how I was going to publish my book. I had always felt that the way forwards would become apparent when the time was right, because that is exactly what has happened with the rest of my book. Although sometimes I have had niggling doubts about the madness of the whole project. This new guide is a golden, elfin-like being who radiates a huge amount of joy and playfulness. She said that her name was Galadriel. Yeah, I can hear you thinking, Trisha's been fantasizing again. She's been reading too much fantasy literature like The Lord of the Rings and is living in Cloud Cuckoo Land. I can assure you that I am not, but actually, does it really matter how we visualize our multi-dimensional experiences? Such experiences are probably contingent on our own psychological makeup anyway, but the underlying message is always highly personal and relevant. Galadriel told me that help was at hand and that I would soon be shown the way forwards and that she would be helping me through the next stages. Fast forward a couple of months, and one day, while I was having a shower, I had an epiphany. My head almost exploded as messages poured in, and I was told that I should create my own YouTube channel to publish the various chapters of my book. All that day and during the following weeks, creative ideas were literally bouncing around in my brain as I went into hyperdrive and embarked on a steep learning curve to take my project forwards. This is still ongoing, but Galadriel has been with me all the way, offering me help and support and providing me with reassurance when things get tough. The anonymous poem, My Law, which is also featured here on my channel, beautifully sums up my own thoughts on the subject of reincarnation. I love the final verse. You are your own devil, you are your own God. You fashioned the paths your footsteps have trod, and no one can save you from error or sin until you have harked to the spirit within.